Okay, hello everyone. We're back from the break. We took a little bit longer than expected, but we're happy to be back here now for the portion of the meeting where the Board of Scientific Counselors will discuss what we've heard and potentially have a dialogue with members of the working group. So I'd like to start this part of the meeting by returning to the charge. So you've heard this a couple times, but it's important because it frames our discussion for now. So the Board of Scientific Counselors today has the same charge as the working group had, and that is to evaluate the adequacy of the NTP responses to external peer review and/or federal agency comments received during development of both the State of the Science monograph and the meta-analysis manuscript. So we will keep that charge in mind, and if we need to return to it as we discuss, we can do so. So I want to start by asking board members to just go ahead and raise your hands if you have questions that you would like to tee off the discussion with. I have one, but I first want to open that opportunity to you all. And if you do, please use the raise your hand function and come onto video. Okay, right now I'm not seeing hands raised. So I'm just gonna turn to Dr. Eaton and the working group with a question about the meta-analysis issue that I brought up really because knowing that we might have lay publics who are listening in who might not really understand the difference between the State of the Science monograph and the meta-analysis. But I feel like we've also heard some examples in your presentation that could lead to a little bit more robust conversation about meta-analyses and the models that were reviewed as part of the Board of Scientific Counselors working group efforts. So you could speak to that, or you could invite a working group member to speak to that.
Yes, well, as I said previously, I have limited knowledge on how meta-analyses work other than they are complex and the analyses can be statistically challenging. I would re-emphasize that the biggest challenge that I think that the NTP authors faced and that we faced and that everybody faces is how do you take these data and construct a meaningful dose response curve and infer the shape of that dose response curve. And that is the huge amount of uncertainty here. The authors assumed a linear response, and there was a question raised about whether that assumption was justified or not. You saw in one of the presenters, they showed what the authors had used as the shape of the response. What I would like to do is ask any of my committee members who are with us today that have looked at this and have raised the issues about how the authors might have done or might be able to do a better job of discussing the strengths and limitations of the dose response analysis from a scientific statistical perspective, so to speak, to talk to some of the issues that we identified and that reviewers had identified that we were talking about. And again, we weren't peer reviewing, we were responding to other reviewers who had expertise in this area. I don't mean to put people, you see a hand?
Dr. Morton has come on to video,
yeah.
so
Thank you.
Are you willing to chime in here, Dr. Morton?
Sure.
And
absolutely.
If you wouldn't mind reintroducing yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Sally Morton. I'm Executive Vice President of Knowledge Enterprise at Arizona State University. I'm also a professor of statistics, and I have expertise and experience in meta-analysis. So I think Dr. Eaton really hit the nail on the head. I mean, the challenge here is one of heterogeneity in the studies, which is always a challenge for meta-analysis. In our review, we asked for more detail on that point, as well as publication bias, and suggested that the authors do a better job of articulating what the impact of heterogeneity and publication bias might be on the results. Going to the dose response model, our comment was that it was difficult to understand what model was actually applied given the information that was in the paper. So I, for example, could not reconstruct the analysis in my head. I couldn't figure out whether it was at study level or how they were exactly doing the meta-analysis. There is in any model like that an assumption such as linearity. The challenge that meta-analysts have is you have the data that you have and the studies that you have. And so it's difficult to often test things like, could it be a quadratic curve, or is it linear? And so you're often stuck with doing the best you can with the data that you have available.
That's helpful, and I think that speaks to the question as I raised it earlier, which is why there were more areas where the BSC working group offered comments or suggestions for revisions. I see Dr. Engel is on video now too. Do you have comments you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just add that, do you want me to reintroduce myself? Stephanie
Yes,
Engel,
please.
UNC, an epidemiologist. I would just add that I think part of this came up because there was an observation that we had perhaps more disagreement with some of their responses to the meta-analysis, but I would be careful to not assume that that is because we thought the meta-analysis was a substantively worse document. That's not it. We were only reviewing the reviewer's comments. So it's just partly the nature of the comments that came in for that document were just, more specific, perhaps like there were just more issues where we felt clarity could improve the understanding of it. It's not that, our charge was really just to respond to their response, not to evaluate the manuscript. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and it reminds me of another point that was made in the earlier presentation, which is in some cases where responses were deemed inadequate, it was actually because there was content from the authors that should be brought into the document. Could you speak to that, Dr. Eaton?
Yeah, and I would remind everyone that our fundamental task here was to try to help the authors make the documents that we expect will be published scientifically strong as possible. And so where we saw areas that were either confusing or required additional explanation, that's what we asked for. And again, I would emphasize both what Sally and Stephanie said. The meta-analysis are almost an order of magnitude more complex than how you interpret, and there's going to be lots of uncertainties and issues to deal with those compared to the state of the science. Part of the problem was the state of the science relied upon the meta-analysis for many of its conclusions, and so the meta-analysis is really important to get it right. And frankly, it's really, really hard to get something right. There's not a paper, there's nobody out there that could have done this thing, and there wouldn't be people coming back having questions about it. So I want this to be interpreted that we were overly critical of what they did with the meta-analysis. It's a huge task. It's a huge challenge. And what we tried to do was provide guidance and suggestions as to how they can make that report stronger and more scientifically defensible.
I have a follow-on question, but I want to remind the members of the Board of Scientific Counselors that we will have a motion today and decide whether we accept the working group's recommendations, whether we offer additional suggestions or revisions, whether we reject their report, or whether we have some other course of action. So I am looking to you to come on video and share any feedback you have, and I see Dr. Bloom has his hand up. Share, and also questions. We have many of the working group members with us. They've done a huge amount of work, and we got an overview presentation. I know all of us have looked at the materials, but this is an opportunity for dialogue, so I really encourage you to join in. And Dr. Bloom, go ahead.
Yeah, so first, I think I need to congratulate the working group. I mean, I think this is just tremendous job. One thing that I was intrigued was there is an obvious recommendation about the need to update probably the literature, given that in the last 2 or 3 years, additional very important studies have been published. But, and I completely agree with that. That would be probably a comment I would do in a peer review of a publication. But when we have that in mind, what is the implication in terms of the meta-analysis?
Well, this is a real challenge to figure out how to do this. I would say that the working group stopped short of saying that the authors need to redo the meta-analysis, because that's a lot of work. However, there are some recent studies that are meta-analyses of these same data. And so we felt that at the least, if they didn't redo it, they need to be able to discuss in the discussion what they found with their meta-analysis relative to what new studies are, without necessarily repeating it, because this was something that we talked about, and it is a challenge on having to go back and repeat the meta-analysis. But I would say personally, I don't see that as necessary. I do think that it's important that they discuss their findings in the context of newer data, even if those data were not included in their meta-analysis. I don't know, Eric, if that answers your question or not, but that was a major issue that we spent a lot of time talking about, on how do we guide them in a way that in which something can be done in a timely manner and not having to start from scratch.
I think I would agree. I would actually advise it the same way, because we got to balance here the practicality of doing it in a robust manner. And like you said, a lot of these new references are actually additional meta-analysis, which may actually be extremely useful during the discussion part of the manuscript.
Exactly, and that's what I see is they can talk about the strengths and the limitations of what they did and what others have done since then, and how they agree or don't agree, and have an open discussion about, what that does is illustrate the challenges of doing these. But I think that is, in my own opinion, that would be the approach, rather than saying that you need to go back and start it, redo the meta-analysis. I don't think any of us felt like that was probably the right answer, given the importance of time in this whole issue.
Thank you, and I see that Dr. Payne Sturgis has her hand up and is on video, so go ahead.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Devin Payne Sturgis from the University of Maryland. I just want to echo the last comment. It's exactly the question I was going to ask the working group, so I appreciate that, Dr. Blue.
Great, okay, so I am hearing both, there were questions and some agreement from board members that though there is contextualization that may need to happen, that can be done without going back to the drawing board. And in the interest of time and recognizing some of the working group's comments as well as the public commenters, there is an interest in timeliness in addressing this. All right, other BSC members, do you have questions for the working group? Yes, Dr. Singla.
Thank you, Bina Singla with the Natural Resources Defense Council. My question was in relation to a comment made by a public commenter about the interpretation of a number as half an IQ point versus a standard deviation of 7 IQ points. So I'd suggest taking a look to see if that needs a correction.
Absolutely. We've already begun that discussion, and I'm hoping that Dr. Morton will go back and look at that. And it's entirely possible that I took, in my preparing statements, took something out of context that was not statistically correct. But I agree with you, Vina, that we will definitely look into that and see if there was an error in our report. Yeah, Sally?
I'll just say I'm happy to do that if that's helpful. I can't answer it now because I haven't looked at the data, but I will do so.
Thank you.
And I'll just flag that other public commenters who called out specific pages and citations were generally supporting these references that they shared. I see that Dr. Meeker has his hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge and weigh in. Very appreciative of the level of detail the working group went into with the comments, and agree that moving on this as quickly as possible is probably in their best interest. And it's clear that they're really narrowing in on getting the language just right. And I think that suggests it's time to put it out there. Of course, everything's kind of a working document with the information you have at the time, and I think it's got to move forward. And I appreciate all the work. Thank you.
So as we wait to see if any other BSC members have comments, I'm just going to circle back to the 4 key areas, the broad issues that Dr. Eaton identified as emerging from the working group's work, just to prompt thinking. If anyone, if I jog your memory about questions you have or any key points that you would like to make, Dr. Eaton, please do so. So the first broad issue was related to scientific issues. And there was quite a bit of discussion around dose-response relationships, timing, cumulative exposure, the dose-response curve, the issue of heterogeneity. So there was a lot there that was well addressed by the working group, but I don't know if BSC members have questions around any of those issues, or if you have any comments you would like to make, Dr. Eaton.
Well, I don't. I think that the only comment I would make was that the issues we raised more often than not were raised by more than a single reviewer. There were multiple reviewers, and that is part of why we felt that in total, these were important issues that needed to be addressed before the report was released. I hope that we provided the authors with the directions and the concerns, and in some instances, ways perhaps around that or ways to address it. But I would also simply state that we fully recognize that there's no way that you will ever have a perfect document. That there will always be uncertainty, and there will always be debate and discussion around points, and we hope that we provided them ways in which they can more fully describe the uncertainties. And I would say that was a lot of it, was not so much that there was something wrong, but more it was either unclear what was done, or the science behind their conclusions needed more explanation.
So then the second bucket of issues was sufficiency of information, and here a number of issues were raised, but in particular the publication of the documents as standalone or not. And since we are hearing about the importance of timing, could you speak to that?
Well, again, we are not really in a position to tell them what to do, okay? But it became evident that if you have the State of the Science report, which would be a document published through the NTP, NIEHS, and another document that was going out to a journal for peer review and additional things, that one relying on the other was problematic unless somehow the timing was coordinated. We noted one potential way around that would be for the NTP to publish both documents rather than submitting one for additional outside peer review. But that's not our choice. They need to decide how they want to move forward. But we do think there are ways to move forward in which each document stands alone, but that would require some additional modifications of both documents. And some redundancy, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Thank you. The next bucket was precision of text, and I don't necessarily have a question about that, because as many of us are part of processes where our written work is reviewed, there are always ways to improve your communication and be more precise. And I appreciate that the working group went to great lengths to make suggestions and explain those suggestions. Then the final bucket was research needs. And do you have any comments about that bucket?
No, as the authors of the report said at one point in response to it, it's always easy to say we need more research. And I completely understand that perspective. And we heard the perspective of lots of people making comments that we don't need more research. What we need to do, though, and I think what this document can do and will do, is to take what we know now and put it in the context of what's important in assessing the potential risks. The last thing I would say is simply to remind everyone that this document, as the author stated, was never intended to be a risk-benefit analysis of fluoride in drinking water. It was intended to assess the scientific evidence for an association between neurodevelopmental effects and fluoride in water, and I think they've gone a long ways towards that, and I think hopefully they can make some changes and finalize that.
Great, I appreciate that follow-up. And I wonder if anyone on the board has any questions or comments. Yes, Dr. Martin.
Yeah, this isn't explicitly commented on. It was highlighted, the conclusion in the meta-analysis, and I guess the response seemed appropriate, but it goes to maybe that relationship between the meta-analysis and the larger, or this, the systematic review or the summary. So it says extends prior meta-analysis in the report associations. And actually, let me go to the actual document just to make sure I'm getting it right. The findings of our larger, extends the findings of our larger systematic review. So I'm just going, I guess it goes just a clarification on
Matt,
whether they.
will you state the page you're on just so that for the record?
Oh, apologies. This is page 15 of the July 2022 draft meta-analysis manuscript. So just to be clear, yeah, so maybe that was and it looks like there may be slight wording differences between some of what was in the comment pages and this. So just to be clear, I guess it's just my question is more that relationship of the meta-analysis kind of extending something or feeding the conclusions of it, because it was stated maybe a little bit differently across different comments in both presentations and maybe even in the documents.
I might punt this to somebody that was looking at the meta-analysis. I think, if I recall, they were talking about, there were, prior to this pre-publication meta-analysis, there were previously published meta-analyses, not by these authors, okay? And I think that they were addressing that their meta-analysis was consistent with ones that had been published previously, not by them. And our comments, our discussion on that's great. But we would point out that since the time that they did that, there are some additional meta-analyses that have been published with these same data, and so they would probably need to extend their discussion to include those under the same way that they had talked about previous ones. Not necessarily redo it, but include those in their discussion. But I think that statement was referring to other meta-analysis of these data that have been published by other people.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, I just want to make sure is there any other comment or question for the working group? I have a question. It's a process question, so feel free to tell me that we will take it up later. But I wonder when the time comes for authors to respond to recommendations, are members of the working group available to the authors? What is the process?
Do you mean with regard to clarity, with regard to what they were? I'm sure we would like every opportunity to ensure that something's clear and can work either through the chair or the chair reaching out to the appropriate staff I mean, appropriate work group member, yes.
Great, okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that there was a process and that Dr. Eaton was okay with the process that seemed to be the logical process. So,
Kathleen, this is Rick. If I could just. Oops,
yes, please go
hold
ahead.
on. Sorry, this is Rick. Sorry, do you mind if I just chime in and ask, just make a comment here?
We would love to hear your comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on the comment that Mary just made. It would be enormously beneficial for me if the working group were willing to continue to work with us and work with me to evaluate comments that are, well, addressed, how the authors from the MTP will be addressing some of the comments. So thank you for your willingness to do that. And again, that would be just enormously helpful to me.
Okay, let me just clarify that I was not signing the working group members up for continued service. I know they are all very nervous with the direction of this conversation, but thank you for letting Dr. Eaton know that you appreciate his willingness to be a resource for clarifying.
I would just say that undoubtedly there will be things in our report that our report isn't clear, okay? And I will do my best to try to either clarify myself or go to my members if there is some point of clarification that is needed in this, because undoubtedly with the length of this document and the complexity of the issues, there will be things that we've stated that are not clear, and I'll do my best to try to help clarify those.
Dave, if I could again just chime in on this. I mean, this is a very complicated issue, and I feel that I need the assistance of the advisory group, the BSC, and the working group of the BSC working together with the BSC to really bring things forward. And I just don't feel that I would be in the best position to make decisions about clarifying some of these items because they are complex. I mean, for example, the issue of risk of bias. It's a very complicated issue, and I know in that Dave, in that article that you referenced that was published just a couple of months ago in Environmental Research, a big topic of that article was the risk of bias, the moderate to at least moderate risk of bias in many of the publications that were used for the state of the science. So just help with that as we go forward would be enormously helpful for me.
We will do our best that we can. I cannot commit the committee members to turning into peer reviewers on issues like that, however, but we will certainly try to make as clear as we can what the concerns we raised were.
Yeah. Well, and again, just clarifying, I hope that the BSC will be willing to continue to work with me. And I bring this up now in a public session only because my understanding is that I'm not allowed to actually discuss this privately with any of you. So I'm bringing it up now in a public session. But just expressing my interest in continuing to work with the BSC and the extent to which the working group is willing to continue to add their enormously valuable contributions, that would be really helpful.
Dr. Wolf, did you have a comment? Oh, okay. Great. I will just close this part of the discussion by saying I do think the global issues that arose are issues that arise with many different compounds, contaminants, chemicals. So yes, there is dialogue that is ongoing about a number of the key issues that were highlighted in the report, and we appreciate the working group's efforts to provide specific recommendations on topics that are really thorny. Oh, you do have a comment, Dr. Wolf? Okay, we thought we were having a technical issue, but we're not. But I do, not seeing any other hands raised, comments, people coming on video, it feels like it is an appropriate time to ask the Board of Scientific Counselors if anyone has a motion, and recalling that our options could include accepting the working group's report as written, accepting the report with specific revisions, rejecting the report, or some other recommendation that you might offer. So does any board member want to offer a motion? Dr. Singla, I see you on camera.
Yes, thank you. Bina Singla with Natural Resources Defense Council. I move to accept the report with the potential correction that was discussed earlier. Thank you.
And let's get the verbiage clear on that potential addition. You had phrased it, Dr. Eaton, as discussing the findings in the documents in the context of newer data in a discussion section. Is that correct?
That would be a second one, okay, which I think is appropriate. She's referring to the specific question that was raised by one of the commenters
Yes,
about the
yep,
statistical analysis,
yep, okay.
and that needs correction as well.
Okay, well, so then we just have, I don't mean to put a motion on the table, we just have Dr. Singla's motion with that one correction. Is there any?
I second.
Who was that, Dr. Bloom or Ruth?
Yeah.
Bloom, okay. Is there any discussion? So the motion is to accept the BSC working group report as written with the statistical correction to the reference statistical analysis as identified in the oral public comments. Any discussion? I would like to ask about this. I do think there was an additional element which we just referenced, which was the providing a little bit greater contextualization, and that was offered as a way to be able to move forward this in a timely fashion. So I will ask board members if anyone agrees to that friendly amendment.
Yes, I would like to add that that to the motion, to add the new meta analysis in the discussion.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kimbrough. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second, but I thought that was actually part of 2 because I think that was included in the
Great. Okay.
in the BCS working group report, no?
Yes, yes, great, thank you. Okay, then we can just focus on the initial motion. Any other discussion, any other issues that need to be put on the table before we vote? Okay, so then what is our process for voting, Dr. Brownlow?
I believe Dr. Kimbrough made the motion?
No.
Or
Dr. Singla. And Dr. Bloom seconded.
So if you can please call each one of the members and I can register their vote.
Okay, so I'm going to call each of you and you can just share your vote, whether you vote yes, no, or abstain. And Dr. Brownlow has already indicated Dr. Singla and Dr. Bloom's vote based on their motion. So Dr. Kimbrough.
Yes.
Dr. Martin?
Yes.
Dr. Meeker?
Yes.
Dr. Payne Sturgis?
Yes.
Dr. Rusi?
Yes.
And Dr. Yang?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a unanimous support for this motion. And in my role as chairing this meeting, I will formally communicate to the NTP director the recommendations that we have made today. We will turn to Dr. Trevor Archer to close the meeting by talking about what the next steps are in this process.
Thank you. And I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the working group as well as the BSC members for the efforts they've put in to this review, and also to the members of the public for joining and expressing the comments that we heard. As indicated, once the chair of the BSC transmits the final report to Dr. Wojcik as director of the NTP. We will sort of carefully consider the recommendations that have been made, and then a decision will be arrived at by the NTP leadership to address the report as presented. So again, I really want to thank the working group members and Dr. Eaton in particular for chairing and organizing this, recognizing the contributions of Dr. Wolf and the support team from ICF that have provided and allowing us to bring together, I think, a really comprehensive review in a very clear and timely manner so that we could arrive at hopefully an adjudicated version of these documents that will allow us to fulfill the mission of the NIEHS and the NTP. So with that, I'll thank you and turn it back to Dr. Gray.
And I see Dr. Wojcik is on camera. Did you want to make any comments?
Only to thank you, Kathleen, and thank all members of the BSC and members of the working group. Well done.
Thank you. We appreciate you being able to join us even from far away. Okay, and I will echo thanks to Dr. Eaton and the working group. We know you put in a ton of time and we appreciate your expertise and your effort. Thank you to NIEHS staff and ICF staff. Are there any announcements that anything we need to cover, Dr. Brownlow?
So last housekeeping items. So I would also like to thank everybody for your preparation and participation in the meeting today, and everybody who's helped put the meeting together. And also, as a reminder, slides and video from today will be made available on the meeting webpage as soon as they meet the government requirements for accessibility. And meeting minutes will be posted to the webpage once they have been reviewed for accuracy by board members and approved by the chair. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Yes? Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Just one point of clarification, the sheet that you showed with the motion needed to also say that was with the with the working group re-examining the question about the IQ comment response. So that needs to be part of the formal record, which was part of the motion. I just want to be sure it was captured in what the public saw. Sorry to...
Thank you. And as we said at that time, we will convey that in writing to Dr. Wojcik. So although we apologize that it was not properly displayed in real time, that will be conveyed in writing to Dr. Wojcik. If you have it, that's fine. If you would like to display it, that'd be fantastic. Yes, and just for everyone listening's benefit, and we will take the language exactly as it appears in the report, so there's no ambiguity about what that is referring to. So there will be a written motion to Dr. Wojcik. So with those final comments, we are adjourning. We thank you for joining us this afternoon.